In the quiet suburb of Mayfield Heights, Ohio, where the most disruptive sounds came from morning sprinklers ticking across freshly cut lawns or the occasional crescendo of a weekend leaf blower, the normalcy was suffocating. Rows of brick ranch-style homes and modest two-story colonials lined the tree-shaded streets like perfectly spaced teeth. It was the kind of place where everyone waved, even if they didn't know your name. It was the kind of place where nothing really happened. But on April 4, 2018, something did. That Wednesday morning, Maya Levine didn't show up for work at the Cleveland Hearing Institute, where she had been a dedicated speech-language pathologist for nearly 4 years. She was always early, 10 minutes early, to be exact. Her co-workers joked about it, teased her lightly for being a type of punctual princess, a nickname she accepted with a smile. So when she wasn't in by 8:15, her boss, Dr. Ellen McNulty, raised an eyebrow. When Maya didn't answer her phone by 9 o'clock, Ellen left a voicemail with just the right mix of professionalism and concern. "Maya, hi, it's Ellen. Just checking in. Hope everything's okay. Let us know." She didn't call back. At noon, Ellen called again. No answer. At 2:30, she emailed, texted, and finally messaged Maya on Facebook, an action she regretted almost immediately, feeling it breached some professional boundary. But still, nothing. Meanwhile, across town, Maya's boyfriend, Jason Miller, hadn't thought much of her silence. They'd had a small argument the night before, something about the dishes, or maybe it was about his latest job interview, the details blurred in hindsight, and she'd gone quiet afterward. It wasn't unusual for her to need space. "She just shuts down sometimes," he later told the police. "I figured she needed time." But Maya didn't need time. She needed help. April 3rd had been unremarkable by most accounts. According to her co-workers, Maya arrived at the institute at 7:51 a.m., coffee in one hand, badge in the other. She wore black slacks and a cream-colored blouse with faint blue pinstripes. Her hair was pulled back into a neat bun, the same way she wore it for work most days. She led 3 back-to-back speech therapy sessions that morning and had lunch alone in the break room, scrolling through her phone, eyes focused. A colleague remembered she seemed distracted but chalked it up to the usual post-Easter fatigue. Around 3 p.m., Maya left early for a dentist appointment, confirmed by a text to her office admin and a calendar entry in her Outlook. She never made it to the appointment. That was the first red flag. Maya lived alone in a modest one-bedroom apartment on Landerbrook Drive, a quiet residential complex flanked by crabapple trees and aging azaleas that bloomed reluctantly in the Ohio spring. Apartment 2B was hers, a corner unit with a small balcony that overlooked a communal courtyard with a cracked concrete fountain no longer in service. When the police first entered Maya's apartment on April 6, everything was in place. Her keys were on the kitchen counter. Her purse sat on the hall table where she always left it. Her phone and work laptop rested side by side on the small dining room table, both powered off. There were no signs of forced entry. No struggle. No broken glass, no overturned furniture, no blood. The beige carpet was freshly vacuumed. A coffee mug sat in the sink with a lipstick smudge on the rim, deep berry, her favorite shade. Even the fridge was stocked. Strawberries, almond milk, half a bottle of white wine. A neatly packed lunchbox contained a Tupperware of roasted vegetables and grilled chicken she'd prepped 2 days earlier. Nothing seemed out of place. Even her 2 cats, Mango and Poppy, had been fed. It was Maya's mother, Deborah Levine, who first called the police. Deborah lived in Shaker Heights, about 25 minutes west. A retired high school English teacher, she described herself as pragmatic, not paranoid. But after calling and texting her daughter repeatedly for 2 days, she had a sinking feeling she couldn't shake. "She always called me back," Deborah said. "Even if she was busy, I'd get a text. A thumbs up. Something." On the evening of April 5, Deborah drove to Maya's apartment. She banged on the door. Called her name. No answer. She walked the perimeter of the building, tried the windows. When she found Maya's car parked out front, unlocked, she peered inside. Her daughter's gym bag was in the back seat. The passenger side floor mat was clean. Maya's custom lanyard from the Hearing Institute hung from the rearview mirror, slightly swaying. That's when she called 911. Mayfield Heights police arrived within the hour. Officer James Rafferty was the first responder. After assessing the situation, an adult woman missing for 2 full days with no signs of communication, he requested permission. She's not here, Rafferty said into his shoulder mic, and if she left, she didn't go far. A missing persons report was filed. Within 24 hours, Maya's face was on flyers posted throughout Cuyahoga County, bus stops, grocery store bulletin boards, gas station windows. Her photo, taken from her professional work badge, showed her smiling slightly, lips pressed in a serious but approachable way. Brown eyes, soft curls, 5 feet 6 inches, 125 pounds. No tattoos, no scars. Last seen wearing a navy raincoat and black flats. Detective Laura Mendelson took over the case on April 7th. Sharp-minded, mid-40s, with a reputation for persistence and patience, she approached Maya's case with a quiet urgency. "We're not treating this like a runaway," she told the local news. "We're treating it like a disappearance." But even that term felt inadequate. It wasn't just that Maya was gone. It was how she had disappeared. She left no digital footprint, no texts, no emails, no social media activity. Her last phone call was to her sister, Naomi, at 7:42 p.m. on April 3rd. They talked about weekend plans and a new recipe for cauliflower soup. Nothing unusual. No alarm bells. And then, radio silence. Jason Miller, 29, had been dating Maya for nearly 2 years. They met through a mutual friend at a trivia night in Lakewood. He worked in marketing, though he'd been between jobs recently, which had caused tension in their relationship. "We had our ups and downs," he admitted during questioning. But nothing serious. Nothing that would make her leave. When asked where he was on the night of April 3rd, Jason told detectives he was at home, alone, watching a Cavaliers game. His phone records confirmed that he'd texted a friend during the second quarter. Surveillance footage from his apartment complex showed his car pulling in at 6:12 p.m. and not leaving again until the following morning. Still, something about him seemed off. He spoke in a flat, matter-of-fact tone, as if reciting lines from a play. When shown a picture of Maya taken the weekend before, arms around him, smiling wide, his face didn't change. "She looks happy," he said. "I don't know what happened." By April 10th, the community had begun whispering. At the corner coffee shop, near the Walgreens on Mayfield Road, customers speculated while waiting for lattes. "I heard she was dating someone on the side. Maybe she just snapped. Maybe she's dead." Facebook groups buzzed with theories. Some blamed Jason. Others pointed to a serial attacker who'd allegedly been spotted near the Metroparks, though no such reports were ever confirmed. One woman swore she saw Maya at the Giant Eagle on Monticello, looking disoriented. That tip, like many others, went nowhere. Meanwhile, Detective Mendelson and her team canvassed the apartment complex, interviewed neighbors, and reviewed hours of security footage. Nothing. No one saw her leave. Poppy was skittish. Mango was bold. Both were healthy, if a little underfed by the time the police arrived. "This is what bothers me," Deborah later told the press. "If Maya left on her own, why would she feed the cats? Why wouldn't she take her phone?" No one had answers. The litter box had been cleaned. Their water bowls were full. A small bag of treats lay half open on the floor near the pantry, as if dropped mid-motion. "It's like she vanished mid-thought," Mendelson said. "Not like someone who planned to go anywhere." And so Mayfield Heights waited. Friends waited. Family waited. Police waited. Nothing came. Tips slowed to a trickle. Search parties dwindled. News stations stopped running the story after a week. But Maya's apartment remained untouched. The lights stayed off. Her voicemail stayed full. And her mother kept leaving messages anyway. And then, silence. In the end, it wasn't the absence that haunted people. It was the stillness. No forced entry. No cry for help. No digital footprint. No trail. Just a woman, 27 years old, loved by many, gone without a trace. A half-eaten dinner, 2 quiet cats, and a phone left behind. And then, silence. Enter Jules Maris. 31. Quiet. Always listening. He wore oversized headphones like armor, even when they weren't plugged in. His apartment, bare but precise, was a maze of notebooks, hard drives, and soundproof foam panels curling from the walls like molting skin. Jules had a podcast. A modest one. Echo Chamber. Its tagline was whispery and ambiguous, where the silence speaks loudest. He wasn't famous. Not yet. His following hovered between 5,000 and 7,000 downloads per episode. That number fluctuated based on the salaciousness of the topic. He got a bump whenever he covered unsolved disappearances involving young women. He hated that. Maya Levine's case came to him through a forgotten thread on a web forum called Web Shadows, buried beneath layers of tabloid clutter and dead links. Someone had posted a scan of an old flyer, Maya Levine, missing, April 2018. It wasn't the flyer that caught Jules' eye. It was a comment someone had left underneath. She never left. They just stopped looking. That sentence echoed in his mind for days. He remembered Mayfield Heights. He had grown up in neighboring Lyndhurst. Knew the exact layout of the streets where Maya had last been seen. He'd even once dated a girl who lived in the same apartment complex on Landerbrook Drive. This one felt personal, even though it wasn't. Not directly. But like all his obsessions, it grew. A year after Maya disappeared, Jules launched Season 3 of Echo Chamber. He called the first episode, 2B. It was stark. No intro music. No soft, eerie piano cues. Just his voice. Apartment 2B in Mayfield Heights was spotless. Cats fed. Phone untouched. Car locked. The fridge full. And Maya Levine vanished. He spent 2 weeks writing that opening line. He knew it had to land like a punch. The episode was slow and spare, like walking into a dark room where your eyes never adjust. He outlined the basics, Maya's job, her schedule, the last known moments, the eerie silence that followed. But near the end of the episode, Jules broke from script. He asked a question that didn't appear in any police reports. Why was her work laptop powered off? It wasn't a flashy detail. But in Jules' world, the quiet questions were often the most revealing. I don't think she meant to disappear, he said into the mic, I think she was interrupted. By the time Jules dug in, Maya's case was already cold. Freezer cold. The last official update had come 6 months prior, no new information at this time. But that didn't mean there weren't threads to pull. Through the Freedom of Information Act, he requested Maya's personnel file from the Cleveland Hearing Institute, including any internal documents and her work-issued devices. Most of it was sanitized. Redacted. Names blurred. But the raw laptop log, once decrypted by a friend in IT, told a different story. She'd last logged into the device at 5:03 p.m. on April 3, 2018. She opened a folder titled Case Notes, K. Inside was a single Word document that had not been saved to the company cloud. No file name. No metadata beyond the creation timestamp, 5:07 p.m. Jules read it 3 times before realizing what it meant. It was written in professional, clinical tone, mostly. Patient, Henry Caskell, 62, M., referred for speech-language pathology following ischemic stroke, left hemisphere. Primary presentation, Broca's aphasia, mild-moderate. Initial sessions unremarkable. However, over past 3 to 4 weeks, patient has exhibited escalating behaviors inconsistent with profile. Persistent fixation on personal life of clinician. Increased eye contact and physical proximity during sessions. Unsolicited, contextually inappropriate comments, e.g., "I know where you go, you left your light on," etc. Last interaction, March 30th. Subject repeated phrase, "not gone." Not yet, when asked to recite simple future tense sentence. Clinician notes subjective discomfort and requests secondary review by supervising therapist. No formal complaint submitted at this time. Personal note, if he's lying, he's remembering something. That's worse. The final line was outside the margin. Italicized. Different font. Jules knew what that meant. Maya had typed it after she'd finished her notes. For herself. A kind of half-whisper in text form. Maybe something she didn't want saved. After releasing episode 2, Fixation, Jules got a message through his podcast's anonymous tip form. The subject line read, "I lived across from 2B. It came from a woman named Cheryl Wasserman, 66, retired nurse. She still lived at the Landerbrook apartments and remembered Maya clearly. She was polite. Quiet. Always said hello," Cheryl wrote. Her cats would watch from the window like little guards. Jules emailed her back within minutes. They spoke the next morning. She was cautious at first, even skeptical. But once Jules mentioned the file on the work computer, Henry Caskell, her tone shifted. "That man gave me the chills," she said. "Came by once asking if Maya was home. Told him I didn't know her schedule. He just stood there, like he forgot why he came." Jules asked her about the night Maya disappeared. There was a long pause on the line. Then she said, "You're the first person who's asked me that in a year." Cheryl had been watching late-night television that evening. A crime show, ironically. She assumed it was her boyfriend, Jason. But she remembered one thing specifically: the man coughed. Hard. A hacking, heavy cough. Not like a cold, she said. Like something deeper. Like a smoker. Jason Miller didn't smoke. His medical records confirmed mild asthma, and he was an avid runner. Jules would later obtain a statement from Jason's former co-workers. Health freak, one called him. Jules knew it wasn't enough. Not yet. But it was something. There wasn't much on him. Public records said Henry Caskell was a Vietnam vet, born 1955, honorably discharged. He'd lived in a modest duplex in East Cleveland for the past 20 years. He rarely left his house, neighbors said. No wife. No kids. No visitors. Jules drove out to see it, on a cloudy Saturday in November. The front lawn was overgrown with wild clover and tall grass. A rusting mailbox leaned sideways like it had given up. He knocked. No answer. He returned 3 times over the following weeks. Each time, the house was still. Curtains drawn. No sign of movement. According to the Cleveland Hearing Institute's records, Caskell had canceled his final therapy session scheduled for April 5, 2018, 2 days after Maya vanished. He never rescheduled. Jules contacted Dr. Ellen McNulty, Maya's former supervisor. She declined to speak on the record. But her assistant, who requested anonymity, confirmed Maya had considered filing a workplace complaint about a patient but was discouraged from escalating unless there was a direct threat. She didn't want to be seen as overreacting, the assistant said. She mentioned that exact word. Overreacting. Jules stared at the waveform of that interview on his screen. The way the assistant said overreacting trembled slightly, like it hurt to repeat. He ended episode 4 with that quote. One night, deep into his research spiral, Jules reread Maya's note. If he's lying, he's remembering something. That's worse. It didn't make sense, unless Maya believed Henry's aphasia wasn't purely neurological. Unless what he couldn't say was buried under something he didn't want to remember. He reached out to a neuropsychologist, Dr. Susan Varela, who specialized in post-stroke cognitive disorders. Patients with Broca's aphasia can still think in words, she explained. They just can't form them. But there's a difference between being unable to speak and unwilling to. She paused, then added, some trauma survivors develop expressive aphasia even in the absence of physical damage. The brain can repress language to avoid confronting memory. Jules felt something settle in his gut. What if Henry Caskell wasn't just a patient? What if he was a witness? Or worse, a participant? By episode 5, Memory Palace, Jules was making waves. Downloads surged. Local Reddit threads lit up. Listeners started tagging the Mayfield Heights Police Department on Twitter, demanding they reopen the investigation. Detective Laura Mendelson, now on a different case, gave a brief statement to WKYC. We are aware of the recent podcast and are re-evaluating evidence as appropriate. Translation, they were scrambling. But Jules didn't stop. He returned to Caskell's house on December 2nd. This time, the door was ajar. Not open. Just cracked. He didn't go in. He recorded it. He played the sound of the creaking door at the start of episode 6. Then he whispered. Sometimes the silence opens before it breaks. Jules hadn't expected the tapes to matter. It was a long shot. A time suck, really. Everyone said the same thing when he asked about security footage from the Cleveland Hearing Institute. Footage is overwritten after 30 days. Policy. Budget. Storage limitations. But then he got a polite, oddly worded email from a retired IT tech who'd seen his request. There's one system we never upgraded. South Hall, Therapy Wing. The DVR's analog tapes might still have footage if no one's touched it. The tapes were stored in a locked utility cabinet, deep in the basement archive room. Getting access took 2 more FOIA requests, a phone call with the legal department, and a non-disclosure agreement. Jules signed it all without blinking. They handed him 5 boxes. Faded labels. Rewound tapes. The clinic had switched to digital in September 2017, but some machines still ran on analog well into the summer, quiet, forgotten eyes on a hallway nobody cared about. Jules set up an old combo VCR TV from a thrift store. His apartment buzzed with static as the tape rolled. The first few days were tedious, empty halls, time-stamped silence, blurred bodies passing like ghosts. He fast-forwarded through May. She entered the therapy room, room 3, holding a clipboard. The hallway remained still for several minutes. Then a shape emerged on screen. Henry Caskell. He moved slow, slightly hunched, clutching the wall for balance with one hand. He stood outside the door for a moment, just stood there, then walked in. 20 minutes passed. At 2:27 p.m., the door opened again. Caskell stepped out, alone. He lingered in the hallway, looking left, then right. Then he walked down the corridor and vanished from frame. Another 2 minutes went by. Then Maya stepped out. She wasn't limping, but she moved differently. Like someone carrying a tremor beneath their skin. Her face was tight. Her eyes wet. And with her free hand, she rubbed her left arm like she was trying to wipe something off. Jules paused the tape and zoomed as far as the VCR would allow. On her forearm, just above the wrist, were faint red marks. Finger marks. His stomach turned. She looked directly into the hallway camera. For a single frame, her eyes were wide, uncertain. Not scared, but deeply aware. Like she knew someone might see this later. Then she turned and walked away. Jules checked her personnel file again. Nothing dated June 14th. No report. No mention of an incident. No disciplinary action toward Caskell. He called Dr. Ellen McNulty's office and asked directly. No, the assistant said. There was no formal complaint from Maya about that session. If there had been, we would have suspended Caskell's sessions immediately. Jules asked if Maya had ever requested a reassignment. The assistant hesitated. Then, she asked to discontinue therapy with patient HK after that day. No reason given. It wasn't just about boundary violations anymore. Jules added this discovery to episode 7, the tape. He layered Maya's entrance and exit times with a rising piano note and underscored it with the sound of an analog tape rewinding. He didn't embellish. He didn't need to. He ended the episode by saying, "She didn't vanish in April 2018. She began disappearing the day she walked out of room 3. The episode went viral. Not in a TikTok kind of way. Not instantly. But in the slow, steady crawl of Reddit shares and dark forum citations. Web sleuths began dissecting Jules' frame-by-frame analysis. A Reddit user compared the hallway footage's timestamp with the building's official room schedule and noted that Maya had been double-booked that day, a scheduling error that placed her alone with Caskell. Someone else, username CryptoGirl84, dug up a local building permit showing Caskell's home had been partially gutted in 2015 after what neighbors described as a basement fire. Suddenly the internet was awash with theories. Was Caskell dangerous before the stroke? Did Maya uncover something? Had she tried to warn someone? The Cleveland Hearing Institute released a short, lawyered statement. We are committed to safety and privacy and cannot comment on personnel matters or ongoing investigations. Then the threat started. First, subtle. It began with the emails. Subject, you got it wrong. You're playing with people's lives. You should stop before someone gets hurt. Before you get hurt. Then came the one-word message. Silence. The IP address traced to a proxy in Ukraine. Jules posted it to Twitter, half joking, half worried. His followers ran with it. They started using #silence as a badge of honor. But Jules wasn't laughing. Not when the doorman at his building said a man had asked for him by name. Not when a package with no return address showed up containing a VHS tape, blank. And especially not when he returned to his apartment one night and found his front door locked, but the light in his kitchen turned on. He lived alone. He didn't sleep that night. He watched his hallway camera feed on a loop. Nothing showed up. But still, he felt it. The breath behind the curtain. He went back to the tape. Jules revisited the June 14th tape again, this time focusing not on Maya or Caskell, but the hallway itself. At 2:30 p.m., a janitor passed by. He paused briefly outside room 3. Looked at the door. Then he shook his head and moved on. Jules tracked down the clinic's janitorial contractor. Found out the man's name was Carlos Mendez. 62. Worked that hallway for 5 years. When Jules called, Carlos answered like he was expecting him. "You're the podcast guy." "Yes," Jules said. "You remember room 3? "I do," Carlos replied. "I remember her." "What did you see?" Carlos was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "I saw her." The message was simple. He didn't lose language. He lost cover. Jules traced the sender to a public library in Akron. When he responded, the email bounced. The account was deleted. He recorded a short segment for episode 9 titled, Cover Stories. What happens when someone who's dangerous forgets how to hide it? What if the damage to the brain only reveals what the rest of the body was already doing? Police weren't talking. The Cleveland PD issued a single-line update. All leads related to the Maya Levine case are being actively evaluated. But behind the scenes, Jules heard whispers. One of his sources at the department, someone who followed the show quietly, texted him. "You're pissing off people who never thought she'd be remembered." Another message, more cryptic. "Check Caskell's military file. Not just VA stuff. Go deeper." Jules filed another FOIA request, this time to the Department of Defense. It was denied. National security, they said. That's when Jules knew he was onto something far darker than he'd ever intended. Jules hadn't expected the voicemail to reveal anything new. He'd posted it in episode 6, The Last Voice, mostly as a tribute, to let listeners hear Maya's actual voice, untouched, unpolished. It was a short clip, barely 30 seconds long. Maya was speaking to her friend Lynn, canceling brunch plans. "Hey, I'm so sorry. I've got a ton of notes to finish up and my cats destroyed the top of the fridge again. Let's reschedule. Maybe Tuesday night? I'll text you. Love you." Nothing dramatic. No static or strange distortion. Just Maya, bright, tired, charming. To Lynn, it was nothing. But to one listener, it was everything. 3 days after the episode aired, Jules received an email from a man named Alan Prescott. The name meant nothing to him. The subject line read simply, "Your voicemail clip, you missed something." The message was short, professional. "I'm a retired audio engineer with 42 years in broadcast systems. Listen to episode 6. In Maya's voicemail, behind her voice, is a sound you might not have noticed. I've heard it before. Let me explain." Attached was a waveform screenshot, an audio file labeled isolated_high-frequency.mp3, and a PDF titled Tandberg signature.pdf. Jules opened the file. At the 7.2-second mark in Maya's voicemail, a faint mechanical sound could be heard, almost imperceptible to untrained ears. A kind of high-pitched whir followed by a subtle click. Then a pause. Then the same whir again, slower this time, like something spooling. Prescott's email continued. "That's a reel-to-reel tape machine starting, stopping, and adjusting tension. Not just any machine. The whir and click pattern matches a Tandberg Series 15 recorder. It has a unique capstan motor sound. The speed shift is unmistakable. I'd bet money it was recording her as she left that voicemail." The Tandberg 15 was obscure, Norwegian-built, discontinued in 1972, expensive even when new. In their prime, they were used by embassies, war correspondents, and obsessive audiophiles. Fewer than 100 were ever sold in the Midwest. Most were either broken or in museum collections. Prescott had tracked their provenance over the years. He was a collector himself. Only 4 were privately owned in Ohio. Number 0011 belonged to a retired radio historian in Cincinnati. Number 0044 had been recovered from an estate sale. The owner died in 2011. Number 0086 was seized during a federal raid in 2006 and currently resided in evidence storage at Chillicothe Correctional. And the 4th? Number 0033, Henry Caskell. Prescott didn't know the full story. But he knew Caskell had bought the Tandberg off an auction site in 2009. He remembered because it was a bidding war. Caskell outbid him. Prescott had been annoyed at the time, especially since the buyer profile had no real audio credentials. Just a verified shipping address in Beechwood, Ohio. Jules checked the date, May 13, 2009. 2 weeks before Caskell suffered the stroke that left him with aphasia. What would a man like Caskell want with a professional reel-to-reel recorder? To Jules, it was obvious. He used it to listen. Or worse, record. Jules played the voicemail again, this time through high-grade headphones. Now that he knew what to listen for, he couldn't unhear it. The whir, the shift, the mechanical memory of a machine made to archive voices in perfect analog fidelity. It was watching her. Listening as she spoke. He imagined Maya standing in her apartment, thinking she was alone, leaving a casual message. Not knowing that something was recording her in the background. That something, or someone, was listening with the intent of preservation. That voicemail had been her final outgoing communication. After that, silence. It wasn't just a chilling technical discovery. It was intimate. Violating. Jules included the cleaned-up clip in episode. He let the machine noise play on a loop, low under his narration. He quoted Prescott directly. He laid out the known Tandberg owners, ending with the gut punch. And the fourth? The fourth belonged to the last patient Maya Levine ever refused to see. The episode exploded. Audio hobbyist forums lit up with posts dissecting the Tandberg's presence. Investigators, both amateur and professional, began to scour old Reddit threads, audio gear trade logs, Craigslist posts, even ham radio club newsletters, trying to triangulate whether Caskell had been collecting other surveillance devices. Theories ran wild. Had Caskell bugged Maya's apartment? Had he left the Tandberg running in her living room? Or had he taken her somewhere else, somewhere she made that call without realizing she wasn't alone? Jules checked Maya's phone metadata. Her voicemail had been placed from her home address. GPS verified it. So if the Tandberg was there, someone else had to be, too. It had been weeks since their first call. She was quieter now, wary of how big the case had gotten. Jules asked again, "When Maya left you that voicemail, did you hear anything in the background?" "No," Lynn said. "It was just her voice. I mean, maybe the cat's. I didn't think to check." "Did she ever mention someone recording her? Watching her?" Lynn paused. "She said something weird once." Jules's heart began to pound. He kept the questions going, buying time. Caskell excused himself to use the bathroom. He shuffled down the hall, closing the door behind him. Jules stood. Then moved. He followed the sound, past the hallway, into the kitchen, then to a small door under the staircase. The hinges creaked as he opened it. Old wood stairs led down into darkness. He turned on his phone light and descended. It was cold. Colder than upstairs. The basement was clean, but forgotten. A cement floor, bare bulbs overhead, a faint smell of mildew. The sound grew louder, steady, mechanical, whispering. In the far corner sat a Tandberg Series 15. Its reel spun slowly. No tape labeled. Just the red light, record. Beside it, shelves full of tapes. Some in cases, some stacked raw, oxide flaking at the edges. There were hundreds. Possibly more. A small chair. A set of headphones. A tape logbook, handwritten. And against the wall, a tall wooden cabinet. Padlocked. Jules's breath slowed. He started recording on his phone. He didn't hesitate. The lock was old. The hasp loose from wear. He reached into his backpack and pulled out a small tension wrench and rake pick, tools he'd bought years ago on a whim, during a phase of researching physical security for a long-forgotten episode. 3 minutes later, the lock clicked open. Inside, shelves lined with unlabeled tapes. Dozens of them, identical. No markings. No dates. Except one. At the back, in a black case with silver edges. Maya L/Final, April 3, 2018. Jules froze. The handwriting was neat. Clinical. As if whoever wrote it knew exactly what it was, and why it mattered. He didn't remove the tape. He didn't take it. Not yet. Instead, he pulled out his phone, snapped 3 photos, one of the tape, one of the inside of the cabinet, and one of the serial number on the Tandberg. Then, carefully, he shut everything and relocked the cabinet. He had what he needed. Or so he thought. Upstairs, Caskell was waiting. He stood at the edge of the hallway, hands behind his back. He said nothing. Jules smiled thinly. Sorry, was just looking for the bathroom. Caskell didn't speak. He just nodded, slowly, and walked Jules to the door. Outside, the sun was too bright. The air felt too clean. Jules didn't look back. That night, he replayed the recording he'd made in the basement. The Tandberg's hiss filled his headphones. Underneath it, faintly, something else. A human voice. A woman's. He isolated the frequency, boosted it. Then came the words. Don't understand what you want. I said no. This isn't, stop recording me. I know what this is. I know what you did. Then silence. Then. I won't be quiet forever. Someone will find this. Jules sat frozen. He stopped the playback. Then started it again. Same line. Same voice. Maya. Jules ended chapter 1 of Echo Chamber with this revelation. He didn't say how he found the tape. He didn't say he'd broken into a basement, lied to a man, or unlocked a cabinet that police never touched. He just played the audio. No music. No narration. Just Maya's voice, filtered through time and tape. The final words. I know what this is. Then came the reel's hiss. Soft. Endless. Then, finally. Silence. It didn't take long. Once Jules handed over the photos, the audio clip, and the details of Caskell's basement, the wheels of official justice, so long motionless, lurched forward. A warrant was obtained within 12 hours. The affidavit cited probable cause for illegal recording, potential abduction, and forensic evidence linked to a missing persons case. When police arrived at Caskell's home at 6:13 a.m. the next morning, he opened the door in the same cardigan, same expressionless stare. He didn't resist. Forensics teams cataloged 114 reel-to-reel tapes, 3 Tandberg machines in varying states of use, and over a dozen handwritten tape logs. The cabinet, exactly as Jules had left it, yielded 28 unlabeled reels, and 1 labeled. Maya L/Final, April 3, 2018. It was the only item placed into a sealed evidence envelope before anything else. Investigators played the tape in full. What they heard wasn't what they expected. It wasn't a confession. It wasn't a murder. It was worse. The first 3 minutes were low, chaotic, movement, a mechanical clunk, a metallic drag like a folding chair. Then her voice. Maya. I don't understand. I already said everything I know. You can't just keep. A male voice, distorted, raspy from age or filtering. Say it again. Say it clear. A pause. Then a click. Then Maya, again, her voice flatter, resigned. I lied about Henry Caskell. He never touched me. He never scared me. The words stumbled out. They didn't sound like hers. The man prompted her again. And? Another pause. I was upset. I wanted to get him in trouble. I said things that weren't true. There was rustling, a faint sob. Something like a chair scraping tile. Say where you're going. I'm going away willingly. Why? Because I made mistakes. I need to. I need help. The tape continued. 26 minutes in total. A coaching session. A psychological reconditioning. A forced rewrite of her own story. Her voice trembled throughout. There were breaks. Tears. Times when she tried to go off script, and he cut her off. Not once did she scream. But near the end, her voice changed. It wavered. Collapsed. Please. You said this would be it. You said if I said it all, please, I did what you said. Then silence. A long pause. Movement. A soft creak. And finally, the sound of a door closing. The recording was never made public. Jules chose not to air it. Even the transcript, redacted and sealed, leaked only in fragments through obscure court filings and message board theories. But Jules had heard it. Alone. Once. And that was enough. He described it, sparingly, in episode 12, Coached, his final episode about Maya. He didn't dramatize. No music. No narrator voice. Just raw commentary. It wasn't murder. It was erasure. Not of her life, but of her story. Caskell didn't kill Maya with violence, he tried to overwrite her. He made her speak a different ending. One that made him the victim, and her the liar. The public backlash was swift. For weeks, social media exploded. Victims' rights advocates clashed with disability activists. Police were slammed for their early dismissal of Caskell. The Cleveland Hearing Institute issued a carefully worded apology. Lawsuits followed. But none of it brought Maya back. He was arrested the same morning his basement was searched. He showed no resistance, no confusion. But when arraigned, he stared blankly at the judge, unresponsive. A court-appointed psychiatrist deemed him unfit to stand trial. The diagnosis: advanced vascular dementia, aphasia regression, possible psychosis. In interviews, he repeated only fragments of words: noise, lies, fixed voice, no more wrong. 8 months later, in a long-term psychiatric facility in Toledo, he died quietly from a cerebral aneurysm. He never confessed. He never named where Maya was taken, or what he did after the tape ended. He simply vanished into death, as Maya had vanished into silence. Police found no trace of Maya's body. Her DNA was discovered on the chair in Caskell's basement. A single hair. A faint blood smear on a rusted nail protruding from the cabinet door. But no other physical evidence linked her to any location, living or dead. Security footage from her apartment complex showed nothing after April 3rd. No credit card use. No cell activity. No sightings. It was as if, once the tape stopped, so did she. He tried to move on. He covered other cases. He returned to cold files and long-closed folders. But nothing stuck the same way. People still asked about Maya. Some blamed him, said he crossed ethical lines, tampered with evidence, sensationalized trauma. Others praised him for doing what no one else had. Neither side mattered. In private, he returned to the original voicemail, the one Maya left her friend, the one with the faint "we're behind her" voice. He played it late at night, not to hear her words, but to remind himself of the sound beneath. That soft, mechanical murmur. That promise. Someone was always listening. The case of Maya Levine became a touchstone in true crime ethics circles. Podcasters debated the limits of amateur investigation. Advocates for the cognitively impaired raised flags about conflating mental illness with violence. Lawmakers considered, but never passed, legislation about mandatory searches in missing persons cases involving therapists. But for those who knew her, none of that mattered. To them, Maya wasn't a symbol. She was a daughter. A friend. A therapist. A real person who vanished into a system that dismissed her intuition, and nearly erased her entirely. Jules ended the chapter, his final word on the case, with a dedication. To Maya, whose voice was not lost. It was stolen. And to everyone listening now, let that never happen again. Echo Chamber became one of the most listened to true crime podcasts of the decade. It didn't happen overnight. There was no marketing blitz. No celebrity endorsements. No flashy Spotify contract. It grew slowly, then all at once. People shared it quietly, first among therapists, then among survivors, then among those who simply felt something was wrong with how Maya's story had been handled. The podcast struck a nerve, not because of how Jules told the story, but because he let Maya tell it, what little of it remained. He never monetized the show. No ads. No merch. No Patreon tiers. He turned down offers. He declined interviews. He ignored the film option proposals. The final episode, episode 15, Resonance, was just 10 minutes long. It aired exactly 1 year after he first published Maya's story. In it, Jules said only this. Maya wasn't a victim. She was a person who tried to help someone. And when that someone destroyed her, the world forgot her. This podcast is her voice. May it never fall silent again. Then, for the last 2 minutes, he played the same soft tape hiss that had haunted the earlier episodes. No narration. No credits. Just silence, trying to say what words couldn't.